No, I think the loan system itself is broken now. I think, the reserve competition is probably not as strong as we need it to be. And if that's the route that we're going down, the reserve competition, that needs to be a lot stronger and allow your squad and fringe players to be able to play in competitive rugby. But, each week 7, 8, 9 players going on loan to different clubs. Is that the right model? I'm not sure it is.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode of Back 10 here from the All Out Rugby League studio. This week I'm joined by Leeds Rhinos legend and Back 10 regular Danny Maguire, and also a man who quite equally has done it all in rugby league, just like Danny. Challenge Cup, Super Leagues, World Club Challenges, a dual code international, 75 caps for Wales and Great Britain across both codes. It is Iestyn Harris. Iestyn, welcome along.
Thank you.
Well, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything across the world of rugby league here at Back 10. If you're watching on a mobile phone or tablet as well, in the comment section, swipe to the left where you can hit and reveal that hype button. Hit it 3 times. You're allowed to do that, 3 times a week, and that will help us continue to grow shows just like this and our prediction show later in the week and everything else across the world of rugby league. But for now, let's dive into this week's show. Well, we've got loads to talk about with Iestyn following what he's been up to since coaching. But Magsy, I think we're going to start over with the weekend that just gone. Hull KR cementing their place at Wembley on May the 30th and a chance for them to win 5 trophies in a row. They're looking pretty good at the moment, eh? Yeah,
they look great. They're playing awesome. I think they obviously had a bit of a tricky start to the season, being involved in the World Club Challenge. That takes a lot out of you. Such a big game. But they're finding their feet now out there. They look awesome. I thought it was a really, really disciplined performance on Sunday, and they just know how to win the big games. And I think, once you're involved in them games and you find a format and you understand what it takes to win them big games, you get on a roll. And obviously 4 trophies in the bag already. They look like the favourites to win a 5th in the row, and it's be a pretty special achievement.
Yes, what have you made to Hull KR's? Obviously the start of the season's been well documented, but they really do over the last couple of weeks look like they're back to their old ways.
They just look really comfortable, don't they, in them big games, just like Danny. There's a real connection within the spine. Whenever they're in tough positions, they just find the way out of it. And you look how they end the sets, they're always putting their opposition under real pressure. Josh Charnley, the Warrington fullback, was a great player, but the amount of high balls he had to take on his own line, and he's coming 5 metres away from his own line, and the defensive side of things, they're very, very strong, and they look as though they're very comfortable now in their big games.
Yeah, they sure do. I mean, just as 2 former halfbacks yourselves, that connection, Mikey Lewis, Tyrone May particularly, he's gone up another level this season, hasn't he?
I think he's probably in the best form I've seen since he came to this country. I think he's a bit of a maverick player, isn't he? He likes to have the ball in his hands. He's very unpredictable, and and his partnership with Mikey's growing. Mikey's temperament and the way he's controlling things now, and Iestyn's just touched on it there, the way he's kicking into corners, and he's that game management that probably Mikey struggled with, a year or 2 ago. Mm-hmm. We've seen that come on leaps and bounds, and I think Tyrone May's been one of the best players in the competition this year. He goes about his business. I like to see him run. I think halves need to run with the ball. We saw him, at the game at the weekend, drift across the line and find Batchelor. And I think he's a threat with ball in hand. But the combination between Mikey and Tyrone is growing, and it looks pretty formidable.
Well, we mentioned there a lot about the attack, but yes, in the defence as well. They were tested a number of times, and it was ruthless. He just kept turning Warrington away time after time.
Yeah, and I think Willie Peters has said that, hasn't he? That big games are won by your defence, and I think you can see that whenever they go into a crunch game and they're physically and mentally on, they're very difficult to beat because they just put you into them horrible places that the kicking game puts you right in the corner, and before you know you're on tackle 4, tackle 5 and having to kick back out again. So I just think the way that they're defending and the aggression in their defence at the moment is probably not matched by anybody else in the league, isn't it? I think there's some teams that are pretty close, but certainly they're out there on their own.
I think you have to be fit though, just on that, Kyle, what Iestyn's saying there. You have to play the style that Hull KR are playing, you need to be fit. You need to have ridiculous amount of mental strength as well. And obviously spending a bit of time with Willie, you know, he has his players. Probably, I'd say they're the fittest team in the competition.
Yeah.
To be able to kick to corners, to be able to kick chase, to be able to front load their energy, and then to be able to flip it when they get the ball and play shape and move the ball like they do. You know, you need to be fit, and you know, for me, you know, I think that's why they're so good, because of the way that they go about things in the week as well.
Well, I think the start to the second half, where Warrington just had a mountain of possession and he just kept turning them away, was pretty evident of the fitness levels. But look, a 20-point gap in the end, 32-12. A word on Warrington then, Magsy, because they'll be bitterly disappointed with that, because again, on reflection, you read that scoreline and it looks pretty one-sided, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know, I thought they stuck in there for a little bit. You know, I think that the first half, Hull had a lot of possession, but going in at, I think it was 14-6 at half-time, you know, they were still in the game, but you know, Warrington have had some good patches this year. I think they've done some good things, and you know, George Williams is a big miss. You know, I think their leader and inspirational player, and him not being out there is, you know, it's probably going to be tough for them. You know, there's a lot of pressure on Warrington every year. Expectations are high at the club. Everybody expects that they're going to be involved in the big games at the end of the season, and you know, they've obviously lost the big games there to Hull KR, so they're not going to be involved in the showpiece at Wembley. But you know, I still think they'll make the playoffs, and you know, I think they've got a good enough squad to be there or thereabouts at the back end.
Look, without signalling players out, I mean, James Bentley's discipline in the first half cost his side 8 points. And, you know, we talked about Tyrone May, Mikey Lewis, that half-back partnership. We had young Ewan Irwin, who I absolutely love watching, and that'll be great for his development. But Mark Sneed, he's opening first half. It wasn't the most prettiest of his career, was it?
No, he probably didn't get parts of his game right, but I think that was generally Warrington as a team. You know, there's probably 8 or 9 moments in a game, isn't there? And all of them 8 or 9 moments all went to Hull KR because they put Warrington under that much pressure, that they created them opportunities. And I just didn't think Warrington put the pressure on Hull KR the same way. I thought the last players were nowhere near what you'd expect from Warrington. You know, and I think to really match Hull KR, the way that they play, you have to kick well, and I just think Warrington were just slightly off there.
Well, look, Warrington missed the chance of having 3 finals in a row, but of course Hull KR, they get through. You know, if you were a betting man right now, would you put them favourites heading into Wembley?
I think it would be a cracker of a game, won't it? I think it's 2 really, really good sides. Wigan are starting to get back towards full complement now. Hull KR look as though they've got everyone back firing. It's a really tough one to call. You know, you look at the grand final last year. It's so difficult.
Yeah, well, look, those 2 semi-finals, they were on paper they were going to be really tightly close contested games. We didn't actually get that, and moving away from Doncaster over to the Halliwell Jones Stadium, goodness me, 32-0, Magsy. That is a hammering, isn't it?
I didn't see it coming, if I'm being totally honest. I think probably a number of reasons, really. Obviously, Wigan's form leading up to the semi-final had not been great.
Yeah.
We were speaking about it off air. I think having Smith back at half-back he's just got that composure, he's got a good kicking game, he's just that link between everything. I think he was a really important cog there. Love watching Farriman play, by the way. I think he's a star of the future, and you know, somebody that we should really persist with, and he's not going to get it right every week, but he's got some moments of magic. And yeah, Wigan were just tough, weren't they? They defended well, and you know, Saints had a bit of an off day. You know, again, we were speaking off air, and you know, just didn't quite get their offensive plan right. But Wigan were very disciplined and got the job done, and like Iestyn said, it's going to be a really interesting final.
And Iestyn, a word on your former club in Wigan. In a big game, they nailed it. I agree. You know, prior to the game, I thought St Helens were coming into it on a good run of form, winning games, and Wigan, I hadn't really been overly convinced. They got a win against Bradford, but Bradford depleted, and they hadn't really rolled into this one with form behind them. However, if there's a club that can flip a switch in a big game, it's proven time and time again. It's them.
Yeah, I just thought they had some balance back in the side, didn't they? I think Jake Wardle back in the team on the left edge gives you strike. You know, Liam Farrell's been playing in the centre, and Liam's been an amazing player over his career, but probably doesn't give you that strike in that position. So Jake gave them there, and then Sam Walters came back in. Harry Smith was, you know, super in the game. He really controlled the team, and I just thought Wigan with balance are really difficult to play against. And they know how to win them big games. They've done it over a sustained period, and I just think they were way too good for Saints.
So yes, in the 32-0 scoreline, will Matt Peet be more pleased with the with the 32 or with the 0? Because I think two players in particular stand out in my mind. Lewis Murphy throws a blind offload and young Farriman's there to mop up. Darryl Clark goes over and somehow Wardle keeps him out. You talked about the 8 or 9 moments in the previous game. Well, Wigan certainly won those ones as well, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. I thought the tenacity and effort levels were Saints just didn't match them. I thought Saints went a little bit lateral with the ball in hand, weren't they, and made it, I'm not saying comfortable for Wigan to defend, but they're a very good defensive side, Wigan. You've got to go through them first before you go around them. They didn't probably quite get that right, Saints, but as Willie Peters said about Hull KR defence win games, we know Matty Peet's in that side of things as well. So, Wigan will be certainly pleased with the way that they performed.
And losing Matty Lees in that first contact and another knee injury. I mean, we were talking earlier, he doesn't do injuries by arse, does he, the lad? And a huge miss. Now, I don't believe that equals 32-0, by the way. I'm not trying to say that, but a massive loss. Lose your captain first play.
Yeah, he's a big player for St Helens, but I think, obviously, the Good Friday game left a bitter taste in Wigan's mouth, and obviously Saints coming back and winning that game. And I just felt like, from the start of the game, you could sense there were a bit of payback. Wigan fans, what had gone on, winning, with obviously Leyland scoring late the Good Friday game. That probably didn't taste too well for the Wigan team. And obviously, Matty Peet, I think we're going to talk about his comments a bit later as well. But there was definitely an element of, we want a little bit of revenge here, and you could sense that with Wigan's performance. Look,
there's no doubt about it. It was clear to see live on the BBC in the dressing room, never write off the Saints. That was obviously the motivation that Matt Peet had used. And his comments after the game as well about St Helens losing their identity. Iestyn, do you agree? Because it's a strong comment to say, isn't it, about your rival club?
It's a really strong comment, and I think he wanted to make a prominent point about it, didn't he? I think Wigan historically have been an exceptional club at bringing the young talent through. They've always gone homegrown first, as St Helens have, haven't they? They've really, for the last 2 decades, they've always committed to giving a pathway through for academy players. And is that changing? Is that what Matty Peet is alluding to? Going back to that 1-week loan system.
What was your take then on the 1-week loan as a club like St Helens? When you first saw that, what was your initial thought behind it?
Look, I think if you're investing hundreds and hundreds of thousands every year into your academy system, which I'm certain that St Helens do that, it's tough for a young kid to take, isn't it? If you're in that academy system and you've not been given that opportunity, and they bring somebody in. I get it if you haven't got the academy system and you haven't got the ability to call on them players, but that's not St Helens, is it? Do I agree with it? I'm not sure. It's probably not my place to suggest, but certainly I think the relevant points Matty Peet makes.
And also, look, Leeds Rhinos sending players over to Hull FC, and we saw what happened a couple of years ago with Hull FC when they were just patient and they didn't really have much of a choice to play Harvey Barron, Lewis Martin, Lytton, all those sorts of young players who are now, the club now sort of reap the rewards for that. Is there an argument again to say, look, Hull FC, they're not going to go on and win the competition. So why would you bring loan players in when you can just promote from within?
I agree. I hate it, to be honest with you. I'm going to give you my honest opinion. I don't like,
I understand a season long loan, and I understand a month-long loan.
Yeah.
If
for game time,
yeah,
and I get all that.
Time. Well, sport's about opportunities, isn't it? And if you're a young player, you don't get too many of them. So if there's a spot available and there's an opportunity to play, and they bring a lone player in, is that right?
Yeah, listen, I get the pressure that coaches are under as well. I've been there as well.
Yeah.
If you can bring a 30-year-old player in that's played 150 Super League games, or you're going to give a young kid a debut, you're probably going to take a safer option. I can understand it, but is that benefiting our game as a whole going forward? I don't think so, and I think the clubs need to be stronger. I think the clubs need to say, we are not going to go get a player for a week. We are going to give this young player an opportunity that we've invested time and money into, and he might not get it right first game. He might not get it right. He might make some mistakes, but then in 20 games, you see a different player, and I just don't like the week-to-week loans. I just think it's...
The system's broken.
Yeah, the system just doesn't... if you're sending someone away for a month to get some game time, to get some fitness, and he can embed in a club, and, I'm okay with that, but the week-to-week stuff, it's just messy.
It's not a good look, is it, for the game across the board?
No, I think the loan system itself is broken now. I think, the reserve competition is probably not as strong as we need it to be. And if that's the route that we're going down, the reserve competition, that needs to be a lot stronger and allow your squad and fringe players to be able to play in competitive rugby. But, each week 7, 8, 9 players going on loan to different clubs. Is that the right model? I'm not sure it is.
Well, just staying with you on that, for our viewers or our listeners who are watching this, Iestyn, they may not know what you're up to. And I think we can sort of guess that obviously player development, player pathway, etc., is something that you're now involved in. You just want to share a little bit more around what you're doing now.
Yeah, so I run a sports agency now. I've done that for just over a decade. So we look after lots and lots of Super League players and young Rugby League players, academy players, scholarship players. So yeah, one of our most difficult times is every early morning on a Monday when you've got guys saying, "Where am I going out on loan this week?"
Counselor yesterday as well.
Yeah, it's just the system's just not fit for purpose at the moment. But the answer to that is finances, isn't it? And that's what we need to generate, more finances in the game, which allow a stronger infrastructure, a stronger foundation within our sport, which allows clubs to be able to bring players through.
Well, look, we've got obviously Jeremiah Matautia, Ethan O'Neill there heading over to Hull FC. You must have clients at Hull FC as well. What's the general sort of mood around those young players who are looking for that opportunity, and then they read that these players are coming in, and then how do you manage that and keep them on track?
Well, it's frustration, but I do understand Danny's point a little bit earlier when he said that the coaches are under pressure. It's a high intense environment being a head coach, and you've got to make decisions for the here and now and for what you think will get you that win this week. Yeah. So I do understand it from their point of view, and I understand that the system is there for that, to bring in a week-to-week loan. So, you don't blame the clubs and you don't blame the coaches, but, it's very frustrating for players. Some younger players that have said, they're waiting for that opportunity to play and they can see it opening up in front of them, and then they bring somebody in from another club. It's quite difficult for them to take, and it's difficult for us to explain that because you sort of agree with how they're feeling.
Do you see this rule changing at all, or do you think it's here to? Well, it'd certainly be here to stay for the remainder of the season, no doubt about it.
I don't know many people that like it. Most people I speak to are a bit, he's going to play there for a week, and you're explaining the situation, and then they're back at their other club for a week, and then they might go back again, and it's just. Yeah, I think it needs to be looked at, doesn't it? It needs to be looked at.
Just on that, whilst you were head coaching, if you flip it on its head here, if you had the opportunity to do it, you'd be taking it, wouldn't you?
You probably would. And again, that's where I understand it from a coach's point of view. When you're in the heat of the battle, you've got injuries, you're looking at your squad on a Monday morning and there may be 15 or 16 bodies training, and you're waiting on some of your senior players with niggles to, are they going to get right? And an opportunity comes to get a player in from another club that's maybe a little bit more experienced or maybe a little bit better at that moment than what you've got, and I get why you take it. But then for me, that's where somebody higher than the coach needs to come out, somebody, the owner or director of rugby, and say, this is our model, this is what we are doing as a club. We are producing our own players. This is a young player's opportunity to grow and learn and develop, and this is our model as a club, and it just takes the pressure off the coach then, and you don't have to go and source a player for a week, and but I do get it, and I'm just not sure. We can sit here and debate it for hours, can't we? But I understand both points of view.
And then I suppose the third point of that is as an agent with the week system loaning players, are you actively looking for your players for opportunities in that market?
Well, I think the clubs work very hard. The very, very good clubs that have younger players that need game time, they've got dedicated staff members that are looking for opportunities within championship clubs and other Super League clubs. And, where we try and come in and help is if we have a player that's not played for several weeks, which is crazy when you think, you have 18, 19, 20-year-old kids that have gone 6 or 7 weeks without a game or one reserve game in that period. They end up getting frustrated. We try and lend a hand and look for opportunities from them. But it's not a part of the job we enjoy, to be honest, but it is what it is. And, will things change with potential investment coming into the game, which will allow teams to have larger squads? it's the medium Super League clubs that have got that thinner back end of the squad that are utilising the system, isn't it?
Well, just on that point that you make, we're led to believe that, Chris Radlinski alluded to that the Super League or the RFL will be meeting, of course, with the NRL in Brisbane, the Magic Weekend. Iestyn, there's so much, I suppose, as an agent to get excited about should the NRL come in and take some control in the game. And we've all got an idea around, we spoke about it on the show for a number of weeks, what that could look like. The fact of the matter is we've not got any detail. You got the ears on the ground all the time, Iestyn. Is there anything that you've been privy to?
Well, I think that's the key. The detail is the key in anything, isn't it? The NRL is a fantastic competition, but we can't get sort of involved in the razzmatazz of what the NRL is. I think what's really important for our game over here is what is the detail of the information, and that's very tightly locked. And I actually think the announcement will be, when it's made, if it's made, it will be totally out of the blue for everybody. I don't think that the information will start to drip feed through the grapevine, if you like. I don't think that'll be the case at all. I think it's very tight-lipped. It's at the right places, and discussions are clearly thick and fast at the moment. So, I think the game in this country needs some added finances into it, doesn't it? To all the problems that we've just been talking about, the infrastructure, the development game. The participation levels within our game of infrastructure, it all needs finances putting into it so we can get more people playing the game.
Max? Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Just what the points Iestyn's touching on there. If we are going to see an investment and see some money come into the game, rugby league development and the pathway programmes needs to see a serious contribution. I'm really lucky at the minute. I'm working at the Rhinos Foundation and I'm involved in the community game, and I'm seeing it, and I'm gonna shout about the Rhinos who do an amazing job, to be honest with you. From the actual funding we get from the governing body to the programmes and the projects that we're delivering, it's amazing. I've just spent the weekend at Butlins with the Rhinos Challenge. 137 teams there over the weekend playing rugby league, 550 games. Such an amazing weekend. The kids loved it, but we have to find a way to get more young boys and girls playing the game, and we have to invest some money into some grassroots and some other clubs. I'm not saying at the Rhinos that's the only club, but there's some clubs probably just dipping the toe in a little bit, and I think as a game we need to find a way to do it better, because I think ultimately that's the only way we're going to be successful moving forward.
I think if the finances comes into the game, we have to have a plan for them finances, don't we? Yes, the players being paid more money is important, because they deserve every penny they get, but that participation level and getting people playing the game of rugby league and the foundation system, the academy system needs an overhaul. All that's really, really important, and that needs to be invested in. And I think if we can get this bit right, we had an opportunity a long, long time ago when money came in, didn't it, through Sky and everything. We probably missed the boat there and did the wrong things with that. You generally don't get two opportunities, and if this is a second opportunity, it's really important that the key decision makers are making them right decisions.
And just a word that we've spoken about the grassroots game, we've spoken about the Super League. Where are your thoughts at? Because you were talking earlier about the reserve grade not being good enough. I'm a big believer and a big fan of, particularly for young middles as well, to get out in the championship and play against men. Where are your thoughts at with where that competition's at? The new restructure that have got it all. It's a bit messy, isn't it?
Well, there's a lot of unrest in the championship at the moment, isn't there? There's a lot of debate on finances and salary caps, and is the system going to have a overhaul? Are they going to keep their own identity but have a link with a Super League club that ultimately becomes a feeder system? So whoever say it's Leeds and Hunslet, Leeds would send 5, 6, 7 of their best assets to play for Hunslet each week. Is that the right way to go? I think I'm with you. I think playing in that championship, that tough competition, is really important for some youngsters.
Absolutely. I mean, years ago it was seen as a bit of a negative, wasn't it, if you got loaned out of the championship? But you look at so many players' careers, they've all spent a number of games, bounced around the championship a bit because of this sort of weaker reserve grade, that it's now part of their development, Magsy, isn't it? To go and test yourself in some old hostile grounds and some uncomfortable things, and having no facilities there and just getting out and playing rugby league.
It's almost part of the journey now, isn't it? It's gone from that. You don't get very many stepping up from academy into first team now. There's, you know, and obviously the reserve grade competition is not where it needs to be. And I agree with you. I think going to the Champ and rolling your sleeves up, playing at Batley and Dewsbury, I think it's good for the development, good for the mindset as well. It toughens you up a little bit. You get to see, you know, some of these young players at Leeds, Wigan, St Helens, you know, they get really well looked after. The facilities are great. To go out and play somewhere different, you know, I don't think it does them any harm, as long as, you know, they're looked after and you don't overface them too much. So, but yeah, we need to find a way to make this journey a little bit more smoother for our players.
And we're seeing a number of clubs in the Championship in a lot of trouble this year, and I think there's been 5 up to now, with North Wales being the latest one. Do you think there's a desperate need for a salary cap in the Championship?
Yeah, I think there needs to be some structure there. You know, and whether that's the governing body that's putting that structure in place, or whether it's the Championship clubs themselves, you know. But I think some clubs have just overspent. You know, it's been their decision to overspend, and they've got themselves into financial trouble, and that's what we definitely don't want to see that. But I do think we need to iron out what the structure is going to look like. Are they going to have support from the Super League clubs? Is that the right model? Again, I think these key decisions need time to be put into place, and I think if you look in recent years, we've made decisions at the last minute. Even with Super League last year, you know, 2 teams coming in towards the end, didn't have too much time to recruit. You know, we just don't want to make this decision right at the back end of the season. So if we're going to make that decision, it's got to be done early.
Well, we are up against the time, aren't we? We still no clarity on, are the NRL going to come in? Where's the TV deal? What does that look like? You know, one thing I think that's evident in talking to you two is that we need some unity right across the game, don't we? Magsy, do you think that though, moving forward, that there's 36 professional clubs in the whole of all competitions? It's not sustainable, is it?
Not at the moment. You know, there's some. I think the stories that you see at times, you know, some of these clubs in trouble. Again, you know, it just doesn't. It's not a great look at times for our game, and again, we need to find, you know, some people probably a bit higher up than ourselves that can make these strong decisions to help move our game forward. You know, it seems, you know, we have a crossroads we were talking about it again just off air, we have a crossroads every 3 or 4 years where we need to decide what to do, and we don't quite get some of these decisions right, and we're picking up the pieces for a few 2 or 3 years after. And again, now the game's at a real crucial period. Now we've got to decide where this investment's coming, where the game's going, and we need to get the right people in there making them decisions for us.
Look, there's loads obviously is to do, isn't there? You know, again, the NRL do come in. They have been proven over in Australia to be an expansion club. I mentioned there North Wales. Obviously, look, dual code international. Sad state of affairs, really, what's happening across not just rugby league but rugby union as well in Wales, isn't it?
Yeah, rugby union's on its knees. Yeah, they're you know, talk of them losing a region. You know, North Wales has just been totally mismanaged by the ownership they've just been in. You know, they've left it in a complete state, haven't they? You know, there's new ownership sort of taking over there and trying to restabilise. But you know, it's sad because you know you could really see rugby league in Wales flourishing.
Yeah.
You know, I think if we keep talking about the NRL investment, if that comes in and expansion is part of that process, then it's pretty obvious that a team in Wales would do exceptionally well. They'd always be well supported. There's so many players. I think there's 23 or 24 teams playing rugby league in South Wales at the moment, right the way up from under 8s all the way up to 16, 17. So we talk about participation levels. You know, there's hundreds and hundreds of kids that are playing rugby league in South Wales, and we're not actually tapping into that. You know, so I think an expansion side of things in Wales should be a real strategy for the game.
And how far does your sort of agency work? How far do you cast your net across? You mentioned there 24 clubs. Is that something that you and your team do you keep an eye on those areas? Or I mean, I'm even thinking up into Newcastle. There's clubs up there as well, isn't there? But how difficult is it for those lads to get an opportunity to make it through there?
Yeah, I think, you know, opportunities come in different situations for any youngster, don't they? But, you know, we've just got to get more people playing the game of rugby league. Mm-hmm. You know, and if you look at heavy rugby union traffic places are great places to start because, lots of kids are playing rugby union, and you can transfer that skill over to rugby league. It's the same asset of skill. So, I think certainly in Wales that's something that we should be investing into. Do we go out and actively recruit at younger ages? No, that's not something that we do as a business, but certainly we want more people playing the game.
Magsy, there's plenty of people who'll be listening to the show and sort of thinking that if we are going to look down the expansion route, that there's not even enough players to have what we've already got. Would you like to see an overhaul in terms of growing the game elsewhere, or are you in the camp of how can we grow something when we've not got the players to nail the competition where we are already?
God. I think it's tough. I think we're missing the boat in your neck of the woods, to be honest, Kyle, up in Cumbria. I think that's been prime for expansion for a number of years, and we seem to ignore. I spent a fair bit of time up in Whitehaven, Workington, and they absolutely love the game. There were a lot of the teams there this weekend at the Rhinos Challenge that just love the game. And
it's the number one game there, man.
It's the number one game, but we seem to forget and neglect that area a little bit. And again, it's really hard because we want our game to grow and develop and be the game that we know it can be. But I think sometimes we try and shoot at things and it don't quite come off, and then we're looking for another quick fix somewhere else. So we've got to get where it's strong, and obviously the M62 corridor is where it's at, and we've got to look after clubs there. But London and the other avenues that we've explored before, and I'm not sure the answer, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. We've got to keep trying. We can't be what's the word? Too sort of single-minded. We've got to look and explore and try and develop these areas, but we've got to look after where strong as well.
Okay, we'll leave it, but I'll leave it on this one question, really, Iestyn. It's one for you that, if the NRL stuff does come in, and it's, that meeting that's going to happen at Magic Weekend almost leans me into that something may happen. If you have a crystal ball for season 2027 and beyond, what would your number one focus be for the NRL to come in and focus on what?
Governance change within the game. I think it's really, really important. I think there needs to be a completely independent board that make key decisions on the direction of the game, not only for the next 12 months, but for the next 10, 15 years, to have a strategy that clubs are part of that strategy, but they don't have the casting vote on what direction the game goes into. I think that should be completely independent. And then I think we'll actually get some forward planning. And I think that's probably the most important part. Now, the clubs, if you've got a controlling element, you're not going to want to let that go, are you?
That's the interesting part.
Yeah, and I'd totally understand that. And if I'm sat here as a CEO of a club, I'd be probably talking differently, because you're part of a decision that you get a controlling vote on. But I think that's the key thing is changing the governance.
Well, we'll see how all that unfolds, and of course we'll keep bringing you the latest news, views and gossip in and all around that, just as we do every single week. Don't forget, guys, to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything here from the Back 10 show and the Back 10 prediction show later in the week. Iestyn, one thing that I'm just a bit curious on is, because everybody knew how much of a wonderful player and a high quality player that you were, and you've gone into coaching, and what made you leave all of that and go into the world of agency?
I got sacked.
Well, that shuts the door on that one, doesn't it? But no,
it wasn't. No, so I left Salford way back 2014, I think 2013. I got offered another coaching job straight away, and the other code, but just wanted to change in my life. I actually went into football agency for 2 to 3 years. Did a bit in China and a few other places, learnt a lot of things there, and that set up the rugby side of things probably about 10 years ago. So it's something that I've always been quite passionate about, and yeah, it's good to help sort of guide and advise players the best way you possibly can. There's difficulties with it, as there always is, but there's never one day that's the same, so it's quite interesting.
And Magsy, just for our viewers and our listeners who don't perhaps know the devil in the detail around the agent role and what he does, as a former player, as a coach, how closely have you got to work with these guys every day?
Yeah, you've got to work closely. You've got to develop relationships, and you know, most clubs now have a director of rugby that would, you know, be probably more liaising with the agents and making deals happen behind the scenes. And ultimately, I as a coach, my best time was on the field, working with the players, working in the video room. You know, that's where I got my, I suppose, kicks. That's what I enjoyed the most. But then obviously as a head coach, you know, there's so many other aspects that you have to deal with: welfare, recruitment, you know, there's so many of the other sort of branches that branch off when you're a head coach and can take your eye off the ball a little bit. So, but yeah, you know, there's some very good agents in the game that, you know, are out for the best interests of the players, and there's some that probably, you know, do things a little bit differently, but Iestyn's one of the good ones.
And Iestyn, talking to obviously players, and having been a player myself, do you prefer working with the younger players or the older players? Because there's two different stresses there, isn't there? You know, when players come towards the end, it's panic stations, isn't it, for a number of different reasons? And with youth comes opportunity, like we mentioned earlier, and that's all they want, isn't it?
Yeah, look, I think we always try and treat every person that we look after as an individual first. I think that's probably the most important thing that we try and do. We try and get to know them a little bit as a person before we start thinking about the rugby side of things, and I think you get a feel for how they work and how we work, and try and get sort of a rapport with them. You know, there's lots of different elements. I think working out how the clubs recruit is really important. You know, do they have a retention first policy, which is leaving opportunities for players that are developing within the salary cap, or are they a recruitment club where they'll go out and try and get somebody better than what's already in their system? And that sounds quite simple, but you know, clubs have very different views on that. So, you know, and if you've got a youngster, you want them in a retention first club, you know, to give them opportunities rather than a recruitment first club. So we'll try and get our best youngsters in the clubs that give opportunities.
Can it be quite frustrating at times?
Very frustrating.
In what way?
It depends on the subject matter, but you know, certainly for quality play. Look, everything's an opinion, isn't it?
Of course.
And I think that's where we advise the players as best we can, is that, you know, not to be disheartened. Everybody's been written off. Anybody who's been successful has been written off by somebody, haven't they? And ultimately that's because it's just all opinions. You know, and our job really is, if a younger player has been given an opinion and they're not quite good enough, we've got to try and find a different opinion. You know, we'll back players that have got the ability, definitely, but it's more attitudinal, really. You know, when you've got a good kid with a good attitude.
And what about the players who are in demand? Because that again is a whole different kettle of fish, isn't it? When you've got clubs who are desperate for his signature, and you know, where's your role playing? Now, ultimately, you're going to say it's down to the player, but you know, how much of an impact do you have on the decision making for these guys?
So we try and have minimal. We try and give minimal opinion unless it's asked for. You know, our job is to create opportunities for them, for the players, you know, at the right times. If a player's coming out of contract, if we can create 10, 12 opportunities across all over the world, then we'll do that. You know, ultimately, I always made my own decisions as a player, and I'm sure you two guys did as well. You know, so it's not up to me to influence anybody. You know, we'll put all them opportunities down on the table, and you know, if I've asked my advice, I will give that. But generally, we want the player to make the decision. And
obviously, you're the middleman in it all, liaison between the player and the club. How heated can that get, them conversations?
Yeah, it can. But that's our job, isn't it?
I'm asking that, knowing that,
you know, agents, managers, whatever. It's a touchy subject, isn't it? And clubs don't want players to have agents, but I think every player should have third party representation. Somebody who knows the industry. You know, knows the system coming through, the scholarship system, academy system, knows the recruitment system, knows the personnel within the clubs. So you can advise accordingly, and you can advise on what opportunities are out there as well. I think if a player doesn't have that third party advice and balanced advice, then they'll miss opportunities and miss directions that they could swing in.
Well, talking about opportunities, there seems to be more and more people who are getting the opportunity, Magsy, to move over into the NRL. Is that something that you're finding? A lot more NRL clubs are actively sort of looking at the Super League? Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's there's been a shift since the 16 teams that have come in the NRL, and the 2 new teams that are coming in. They really are looking at, you know, we'll get we've had several times where agents have contacted us or other clubs have contacted us on particular players that we represent, and sometimes you think, how do they even know who these kids are? They've not played first team. They're still in the academy system, but you know they're doing a lot of due diligence over here at the moment. You know, but again, our role is to have a balanced view on things. You've got to know the player as well. You know, sometimes, you know, my son's 20. There's not a chance he could go and live over the other side of the world and carve a new life for himself. But my daughter could. So you know, it's you've just got to know the individual, and if that individual wants to do it at that age, you know, Kai Pierce Paul we look after, who's across there at the moment in the Tigers and doing amazingly well. You know, Melbourne wanted him when he was 19 and 20, and we had to sit down and say it's just the wrong time for him. It just wasn't right for him as a person at that point, and he went 4 years later. So it's just knowing what's right for that person, you know. But ultimately, if we get given the opportunity, it's our responsibility to put that to the client.
I think it's just understanding your players, isn't it, and understanding when it's the right time. I think it's amazing now that our young players get an opportunity to go to play overseas and go and experience something different, go and experience the best competition in the world, and come back in a great position financially. This game, you know, takes a lot out of you, and you know, to be able to go and earn, you know, life-changing money. So, you know, some of these boys are going to earn life-changing money that when their career finishes, which it finishes quick, you know, we all know that, and you can come back in such a better position. Do we want to lose our best players to Australia? No, we don't. We want them playing in the Super League, don't we? We want to see the best players week on week playing in our competition. But ultimately, it's going to happen.
I think it's tough for the clubs though as well, because I think we protect the top end. So you've got your three marquees at the top end, so you get the ability to go past your salary cap and keep them players in the game. But we don't have that at the bottom end. We don't have that at the academy system. So if your best three academy players, you've got to keep them low on your priorities because they're not ready to play yet. So you can't afford to pay them because they'll come onto your salary cap.
But there's a lot of time, effort and energy gone into developing them,
and I actually think we need a similar system, you know, to what we've got at the marquee at the top, you know, so you can ring fence off your 4 or 5 best kids within your club. And just say, look, you're protected outside of the salary cap, because clubs want to do it, they want to keep them, they just can't.
Well, Matt Peet spoke about it, didn't he, with Noah Hodgkinson? I think he alluded to something like, well, if there comes an opportunity where there's more money out there for him, they can't stop it, can they? Because of the salary cap. So, no, but it's a real good point you make about ring fencing those 4 or 5 top end academy players.
Keep them in our game for as long as we can.
Just on the quarter. The 10 quarter players that are allowed to come over. You obviously have representation on both sides of the world, don't you, for players? Where are you at with that? Because it's another thing that, again, seemed really rushed. And look, I coach kids rugby under 14s level, and I would hate for our young players not to be able to get an opportunity in the game because of that.
I just think it was a really knee-jerk reaction to up the quarter. I think it was created to suppress the value of British players over here initially, which gave clubs an opportunity to go to the Q Cup in Australia, which is the division below, and bring in, you know, sort of mid-20s, late 20s players that have never played in the NRL and flood our game a little bit with players that are they improving Super League? There's an argument to say that they're not. And that's blocking opportunities for younger players. That's trying to suppress the value in here. And I actually think the clubs have gone, this hasn't quite worked.
I mean, you do get the odd success story.
Of course you will.
But you're always
the odd success story.
But not as successful as all the academy kids coming.
100%. No. I mean, maybe one off the top of my head is Cooper Jenkins at Leeds. You know, playing Q Cup. He's come over and he's established himself as, you know, one of the good front rowers in the competition now. But for me, I'd much prefer to see
Presley Cassell.
And this is, you know, no disrespect to any Australian player in this competition.
He looked like he was going to kick on and find another. Like, you know, you got excited. But what I'm trying to say is that unless you're made of stone, how can you not get excited by local young lads playing the game? Like,
he's a superstar in the making that's not got the opportunity this year. And is that because Leeds have recruited in Australia from the lower league? Again, it's not my position to say that's right or wrong, but what I do know is that there's a superstar there in waiting that's not getting to play.
we have to find a way to get them in there, don't they? Them young players that we've invested time, money, effort, and you can see they're going to be potential superstars. Then not playing, Jack Farriman, for example, he's a diamond for me. I love watching him play. I think he's got all the ability in the world. And Bevan French is going to potentially come back in a week or two's time.
You're not going to not play Bevan, though, are you?
Where's his growth and where's his development going to... we're starting to see him come through it. I read a few sort of... When Wigan went in a good period there and he was getting a little bit of stick, and that's fine as a young player. It's not always going to be perfect, but he's come through the other side. We saw him with his performance at the weekend, and then where's he going to play when Bevan French comes back? And that's the challenge.
Well, he probably had his best game the week before after coming under fire a bit at Bradford when he half-backed with another young lad out of the academy. His name slips my mind. But, they've stuck with him and he's come up and he delivered in a massive game. And he had an interview after the game and he said, well, if I am playing, so I think he's aware of what might happen. And, I mean, it's a difficult call, isn't it, if you're the coach there, but...
As a young player, you know where you sit within the ranks of the team and you understand that, Bevan French is an amazing player and if he's fit, he's going to be, he's going to be playing over the top of me and that doesn't stop you working hard and being disappointed as a player, but it's Wigan produce young players, don't they? And their challenge is to keep them happy.
Well, we spoke about the young players there, Iestyn, but we are unfortunately running out of time. We could talk about this all day, but the superstars of the game, the poster boys of the game, where are you at in terms of representing them? Do you think that's something that the game and the clubs, they need to push more? Do we need to, or do we accept that we're not perhaps as big of a sport as football and these players don't have that big of a profile? Are you for pushing it more and more? Or
100%, yeah. Commercial opportunities are difficult to come by in rugby league. I think we've got to try and create more of that. I think we've got to work harder on our social media. Clubs are indifferent. I think there's got to be some consistency in the quality of social media that's going out by everybody involved in the game. That's from, we always say to our players, you've got a responsibility on your commercial side of things to push your own social media in a professional way. And I think that's key for everybody across the game because I see a lot of inconsistencies. Yeah. I won't talk about what players, I see one player 1 week scoring a try and then he's asking if anyone's got a skip that he can hire for.
I think we've seen the Matchroom. I think that's really interesting. Matchroom
absolutely
sport, dipping into rugby union. That's the
thing is,
what's the player called that they've just picked up with the blonde hair? I forgot his name. Pollard. Is it Pollard?
Pollard, yeah.
Pollock. Is it
Pollock?
Henry Pollock. And that's interesting for me. And I remember when the discussions with Eddie Hearn, and he couldn't name
one player.
He couldn't name any rugby league players, which is quite scary, and we have to find a way to be able to promote our superstars a bit better.
The thing is it's I've got teenage kids, and how they consume everyday sort of social media is massive for them, and it's tapping into the youth, isn't it, that's going to take you into the next level, and it's making or having a product out there where these guys are recognisable. And I agree with you, Iestyn. I think a lot of it's on the players as well. A lot of it's on the players to drive it.
And advice that the players should be getting from the clubs as well. The commercial and the push of the commercial side of our sport is hugely important, and do the clubs have dedicated staff members that can advise and push the right messages out for the players? It's certainly something that I think we could do better. I don't know all the answers to it, but certainly I think it's a hugely important part. We want the mainstream companies involved in our game of Super League, and to that we've got to create stars. And I don't think we've got enough. We've got enough stars within our game that aren't known.
I just look at what the NRL are doing at the West Tigers. Benji Marshall, he's driving that. He's done it all, played. He's been in the media, he understands it. And then he's actively encouraging his players to take that role on a bit more serious, because that's where the drive and commercially and everything's going to be. It's all over. That's how all the media's consumed these days, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I think clubs have got to take a forward-thinking view on it. If we get opportunities within our game, whether that's RL commercials or whoever, find an opportunity for the players, that they release the players and allow them to go and actively seek that commercial opportunity, because I think a lot is driven by performance, isn't it? No, we're training on that day, or we're training on this day, and no, you can't do that and you can't do this. I think we've got to take a really forward commercial viewpoint.
Well, who knows, that change may end up happening as well. But the last question, it's only because it's in my notes here. One of your superstars, Josh Charnley, he sits 5 tries away from Ryan Hall. Are you backing him to one day be Super League's all-time top try scorer?
Well, look, he's playing very, very well at the moment, isn't he? And, Ryan's a super player. I think Josh is playing on the left. Ryan Hall's playing on the right, isn't he? That's right. I think you get more opportunities on the left than the right, generally. I think if you look at Lee's attacking threat on the left-hand edge, I think Josh is going to get more opportunities through the second half of the year, and we've got our commercial team working a little bit behind the scenes on something ready to go when that happens. So, I think he's got a real chance on that. But Brian's a super player. He might play till he's 40.
Yeah. Well, we never know, do we? But Iestyn Harris backing Josh Charnley to go all the way one day. So watch this space. That's us for now. Thanks very much. Congratulations to Wigan Warriors and to Hull KR progressing through to the Challenge Cup final on the 30th of May. Don't forget, you can get your tickets at RL Commercial website. Also as well, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you don't miss anything here from Back 10 and Back 10 predictions, and everything else that comes out of the studio from the All Out team. In the comments section as well, listen, we say it each and every week, we love hearing and reading all of your thoughts. Our team particularly love doing that as well. So in the comments section to the left, there's that hype button. You can hit that hype button 3 times a week and help us to continue our shows so we keep delivering more and more content just like this. My thanks to Iestyn, my thanks to Danny Maguire, and thanks to you guys at home for listening or watching. Take care and enjoy the Super League as it returns for round 11. I think it is round 11. Bye for now.